imposters is pretending to be us. Like we're not gonna know our people. And that's why they give us an alternate perspective of history so that we could celebrate the oppressor as if he's saved us from ourselves. He didn't save us from nothing. We was doing just fine till they came over here. We dealt with ourselves how we dealt with ourselves. Then they upset our peace. And I'm here to establish justice. That's the instinct of a matriarch. She know that her son need to see a man to be a man. Anybody born with the gender can be male, but only certain types of men is the influence that a matriarch will want around her son. So sometimes the father might have problems with drugs or alcohol or whatever, hookers, whatever his vice is, and it don't work. The wise women know to expose their son to strong, positive, driven men. And so she does that unconsciously and might see it years later, as in your case. But you following something that the matriarchs teach the women anyway. If your relationship doesn't work and you can't, for whatever reason, he might have a mental disorder. It might hurt you and the children. So you can't have them around. And the matriarchy tell the women, if you have sons, make sure that they're exposed to the type of men that you want your son to become. Mm-hmm. And the exposure allows him to see what his masculine side is supposed to look like. Right? But the women that's caught in the feminist agenda, they don't want their son to exhibit masculine traits. So that the patriarchs that they represent as drag queens can be the dominant male figure for the women to look at. And they all got skeletons in their closet bigger than dinosaurs. And so they, long as our men don't just do what the man supposed to do, it's like in my case, my mama sent me to do this work. She don't send me to do nothing this complex just to be sending me. Somebody finna get this work. My mama said we ain't come from no Africa. I don't need nobody else to tell me nothing after that. We ain't from Africa. My daddy told me about his Native American grandmama hair down to her ankles. I don't need nobody else to tell me nothing. I know what's going on. I read the culture and I read the history. And the culture don't agree with what the history is telling us. Okay. So I'm telling the people what the culture say. So the Carolinas is very instrumental in this entire 500-year struggle. It was the Gullah Geechee Big Mama who was the highest matriarch on the land, called all of the tribes to war against the Spanish in Florida in the Gullah Wars. Right. When the Afro chiefs arrived, this is when they started calling us Seminoles. And they said that the Afro chiefs was runaway slaves. That's the Seminole narrative. Right. The Gullah narrative is Big Mama said all hands on deck. We got invaders at the door. Some of us went to give support against the French in Louisiana, and the rest of us, all hands was on deck, moving into Florida. That's why Florida, the finish line, right? But the call came from the Carolinas, and this is why Big Mama, Empress Redbird, had to be coming from Carolinas, because the same place that she emerged is the same place that we got the call. And this is why they were saying that we was runaway slaves. We wasn't running away from plantations. We was running away from family settlements that they had encampments around to keep us on. And when they took Big Mama out, they took her name off Big Mama House and called it the Big House. And Slick Willie, she was married to, dressed up like the butler and put them fancy white folk in them fancy clothes and told them that they was the owner all the time. That house nigga was running the show. This what happened to us. This is why we were so adamantly against the house nigga. But see, he used to, behind the scenes, treat Miss Ann them the same way they treated us in the field. And when Miss Ann them get tired of it, they realized that he didn't actually gave them too much power, and they ousted him from the house. He ran out to the field for help. And we none the wiser. Till after the fact. Then we start realizing we can't stand them house niggas. King George was solicited by the French to sponsor Georgia as a state to stop us from supporting the Gullahs, and they was put a military force in the state of Georgia to try to stop us from giving that back up. This is when we went into the Conjure Wars. This is the cause. What's special about the Gullah Geechee people, when we talk about the royal families from Africa marrying into the royal families over here before Columbus came, they a prime example of that. They a prime example of that. They knew what tribes that the people that married into the people over here was from. And then their history was changed to the slave narrative. But they was here long before that. Settled on them islands just like you talking about. Their culture itself is seductive to our people because the way that they fuse their indigenous ancestry and their African ancestry is almost hypnotic to experience for us.
Right.
The only we with POW, they call it the slave trade to try to convince us that we came from somewhere else.
Yeah,
we was prisoners of war at home.
Yes. Okay.
But I was talking about the Trail of Tears and how they pushed us out on the. That's they were saying we was Africans, but we wasn't no damn Africans. We was already here. That's just to make us not reclaim the land at the close of the age. Trick no good. And if you pay attention to what you're saying,
go ahead.
Look, what you're describing is the call back home that Mother Nature giving their kids. When we have to move for a purpose like war, right? We always going to return back to the part of the land we originate from. We have to. It's in our nature. Everybody makes a pilgrimage back home. They don't know why they going. You hear people now, girl, I'm going to Texas. I don't know why I'm going down there, but I got to go to this game. But it got to be the game in Texas. They having the car to go to Texas. They just need an excuse. Because they see something spiritually that they can't explain in the 3D. Nature calling them to Texas. Now they looking for a game in Texas so they can have an excuse to go. Because they don't know how to tell their friends that they just had a spiritual experience and they realize that they need to go to Texas even if it's just to spend the weekend. Dude. It's in their culture, it's in their blood. They know the African kin folks they got on the other side of the water. That's the difference between a lot of the rest of us is that we don't trace back to Africa because we was already here. And if we did, we would be able to Gullah Geechee trace back to Africa.
Right.
They can tell you when they got tribal history of interacting with Africans long before Columbus. They were doing trade and marrying in the royal families with Africans long before Columbus sailed.
Okay. Okay.
They had already had a communication and presence in communication with both sides of the water.
All right.
They
So you
want us
saying
to believe
so
that
they were
only when the
African?
European come did we discover Africans.
All right. All right.
It all up. Listen, they
Okay. Go
traded.
ahead. Go
Africans
ahead.
traded with our tribes all up and down the eastern seaboard, including the islands.
What year was this?
This was before Columbus. For
Where can I
thousands of
find
years,
this?
it's nothing new. It's
Okay.
not
Where
new to
can I
us
find
over
this?
here to have interaction with Africans. What's new
Yeah,
to
but I'm
us
just
is
saying.
for to tell us that we are Africans when
But the thing is,
most
though,
of us was already here.
respect. Yes.
Right?
So
Yeah, they
okay.
would be referring to the because they had seafaring tribes long before Columbus sailed. This
Who?
is how the Moorish navigators knew where to come to look for a settlement
Right.
because it was in the log that all of the navigators of the world had at the time. This was
So
just an off limits land that they wasn't supposed to touch. That's
all
why
of
they
these
call
things
it
that
God's country.
all of
Can
these
I?
things.
The Vikings did come over here before Columbus.
So you talking about the Norse, the Celtic, and the people like
Yeah,
that.
they today we call them Hell's Angels because they was given the charter to roam as nomads.
Now, did they hit North America? Where did they
Yeah,
land? What part?
it's
Is
not a
that
myth.
not a myth story?
There's
Is that hold up?
artifacts.
Is that
There's
not a myth
artifacts
story?
that accompany that.
What's the artifacts? Where did
They
they hit
have
at?
they
Did they
have
hit what?
stone they have
Canada?
stones that they wrote on when they came that was here before the settlers by hundreds of years.
Was what?
Discovery Channel did a whole show on it. That's a good place to start.
Discovery?
Discovery Channel. The videos on YouTube,
And they
but
say
it
they
was
was
produced by Discovery Channel, Vikings in America.
yeah.
Humans, for lack of a better way of looking at it, they hacked humans. It was a hypnotist named Esther Brooks. If you go to my page on Instagram, the SikApe page, you will see it. But Esther Brooks was the hypnotist who discovered that you can hypnotize somebody, implant a thought, have him deliver a top secret message, never knowing what the message was, based off something that the person you got to deliver the message says to him. Right? This is documented in part of the MK Ultra studies and whatnot. So we know it can be done. What they call demon possession is hacking of a psyche. Where is it being hacked from? We don't know. Sometimes the person will create an egregore to surrender the control to, and this is how you create an alter ego, or alternate ego. The ego is the artificially created self that you believe is you. The alter ego is the artificial self that you create to deal with the parts of life that the regular self refused to deal with. And this is why a lot of like serial killers and whatnot, they classified as multiple personality disorder. He's normally a nice guy, but when he turned into that monster, you don't want to see him. Right? This is what they're talking about. And there's numerous records of people that didn't know any psychic self-defense that used astral travel and received a negative effect. But what a lot of us don't know is a lot of the shaman priests used to use astral travel in the conjure war we was in. They were attacking them. If they found out they was travelers, they'd kill them while they was traveling. They'd kill the physical vessel so they can't get back in the body. Right. So they use different means to do that. But because the most powerful ones was the dream walkers, which is actually a form of astral travel or lucid dreaming. On that same note, when you mention those Michaels, right, there's still millions of Michaels that ain't shit. You got to remember that part, though.
Talk to me.
But when you look at anything that's written with letters, every letter has a color, a numerical value and a vibrational sound frequency. Right? When you got an ancient name, you got multiple great people imprinting this name, this same name, right? They're creating the power. Now, everybody who have the name won't know how to access the energy. You got to have both the blood and the right. You can't just have one.
And just have one. Okay. Okay. Talk to me, Rod.
Right? So if you from a certain bloodline and then they name you a certain name, the numerical value of each letter, the color code of the word, because all of them are a different color. And then when you mix colors, you come up with an original color when you mix different colors together. So it's going to create its own color. And then it's going to have a density to it that can be actualized like an app on a cell phone.
Right, right.
Right. So remember, all of this stuff is egregores, thought forms.
You keep talking about that. You keep talking about that.
Right. Because we keep doing this to ourselves, not knowing what we're doing.
Right. Okay.
So, like earlier, you heard Brother Carson say, don't say negative stuff to yourself about yourself. Right? Because you telling the egregore to be belligerent to the self. Right? So, if you telling the egregore to be belligerent to the self and don't fuck around and hit it with a prayer and say amen. Because now you told the whole higher God self to amen. Be hidden. I don't want to see you in this physical world. Right?
Absolutely correct. They actually repurposed the castles. We had too many castles on the land to just destroy them all. So what they did is they repurposed the castles as mental institutions, as state hospitals, as state buildings, government buildings, and prisons. We didn't have no prisons over here. So why are these buildings that's prisons from the 1300s? Architectural style. They wasn't building that style anymore. That style was obsolete. So they didn't build that prison in 1900 like they told you. It was already there. They just took all. That's because we all went to fight in the Gullah Wars. All clans on deck. The Spaniards was the primary obstacle. We also fought the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, the English, the Spanish. All of them was working together to come and conquer us. This is a good question because local government is the only government that we actually can control for sure. As long as the people are, yeah, somebody just came in. As long as the people in the local town organize together, then y'all can retake y'all city. It's a FEMA relief call tree that you can get on. Peace, God.
Question, Rod. I'm glad that I'm on here, brother. I appreciate you. I had two questions. The first question is concerning public domain. Public domain, I believe it was used to grab land, right?
No, that was called eminent domain.
So eminent domain was used to grab land. When does that expire?
Eminent domain is when the government come in and acquiesce a piece of land for the purposes of the government. Right? So that's actually a good question. But under once this government finished falling, when enough of us is aware that this shit is over with, when the new system come online, all of the land revert back to its original owners before they contracts, because all of their contracts is now expired. Which means us as the families, that's the organic tribes, we being reorganized in order to resettle the land all over again. It's a reset for a reason.
Okay. And a reset is back to the original owners of the land.
Yeah, it got to go back to the original. That's why I say, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. It's talking about the ancient ones returning. Empress Verdiasi wrote about it. And all it is those old ancestors came back in the modern day from eons gone by to restore the land back to balance and to teach the people how to maintain the balance all over again. Because the Conjure War was fought and won, we can reset back to a golden age.
Okay. My next question, and I'm not going to leave you alone on this and let you ride out. I appreciate you too having your own live and allowing us to come in and talk. And I definitely appreciate you with Young Elder. My next question is I've been doing my research on my family, and I found the Freedman's bank account. What does that have to do with what's going on, at the moment?
Spell the name of the bank account.
Freedman's with the D.
Okay.
FREEDMANS. MANS.
And how did you find it? What was it linked to?
Well, what I did was I went on familysearch.org and I've been just looking at family documents such as military registration records, the draft cards, death certificates, any documentation that came with the family or was, with my family attached to their names in familysearch.org. And I actually found where my great-great-grandfather was a treasury over an account at the Freedman's Bank. And I have the number and all, but it's like, where do I go from there? I know where his land is. Me and my family have located the land that is with his name. But I'm basically stuck at a dead end right now. What do I do with that?
When the new system come online, they're going to be doing a program at the Small Business Administration to help you identify and locate the family wealth as part of teaching you family banking.
Okay, I already got my sister on the family banking deal. We're starting that. It's 6 of us, so we're putting it together. But go ahead.
When you go when the new system come online, when we repurpose the Small Business Administration, they're going to be holding certification classes in accounting and family banking specifically for us to be competent to handle our own wealth and our own affairs. Part of that is what you call family forensic branch. This is specialty to the family member that got an eye for detail. The family got to pick the one they send to do forensic investigation by looking at the document.
Now, if you look at those Michaels, Mike Tyson didn't grow up in the church.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jordan might have went to church, but he grew up on the basketball court. Michael Jackson might have grew up going to the Kingdom Hall, but he grew up as the entertainer. His focus was never on the dogma. Mm. It was on the compass that the energy drove him for greatness.
Right.
And when we look at these three, Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson, and Michael Jackson, what's the common denominator besides the name? Dedication to the constant muscle memory training, whether it's the vocal muscles, the basketball muscles, or the boxing muscles. The dedication required is the activation of the warrior Michael angelic energy, as they call it. The only reason why it's even an angelic energy, because it's supposed to be Michelle, but since the patriarchs took over and masculized her.
Ooh, you took it there? It's supposed to be Michelle. Right, man.
But since the patriarchs took it there and masculized her, we men being to be able to use part of that frequency to a high degree. So it's just the same as putting an app on your phone. You're just putting it in your brain. Right? Now, just because the app on the phone don't mean that anybody on the phone know how to use the app.
Got you.
Right? But if you have a genetic memory of what to do when you get certain apps, you're gonna know. It's gonna be instinct at that point, which they call it instinct, but it's genetic memory. That's why the blood carries the genetic memory. The know-how gives you the right to activate it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you got to have both the blood and the right. You can't just have one. That's why you got two brothers, both of them pretenders to the throne, but one of them not qualified because he wouldn't study. But the one who studied to show himself approved, he can prove that he's worthy and that he did the work by his effort.
Mm-hmm.
But the other brother just going to be huffing and puffing mad because he didn't want to do the work because it was hard at the time. But in the retrospect, in the aftermath, what looked like hard work wasn't shit. Right? So it's just an app. All of the names are apps to activate the ego consciousness. Right? It's the same as on the phone. You just got it in your Earth rover. First thing is the jealous God concept is where we got to start at, because first of all, jealousy is a frequency. But in the human animal, jealousy is a learned behavior, and it once was classified as a mental disease or defect by the psychological DSM manual. It used to be called dementia praecox, right, which is a form of schizophrenia. And the jealous God is Enlil himself. Right, so just take us back to that Anunnaki shit. Because if you leave the Middle East and you study religions like Buddhism, Jainism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, Hinduism, none of their guys is jealous until you get to the Middle East. This Hebrew, Babylonian Yahweh God is the first God on record to openly leave a record saying that he was a jealous God. Jealousy is a learned behavior in humans. So who taught this God to be a jealous human? Right? Because if he was truly jealous, that means that he got a human attribute that he doesn't have the God quality capable of controlling. Right? So the ones who sacrifice like that, it goes to what we was talking about earlier with the white noise. It's not that they don't want to be good in the family they dedicated, because we know subconsciously at some level our ancestors lost the land through sharecropper agreements through a crooked government, and they got meticulous records on it. They told us what they did. It's not no secret. They caught our elders up in sharecropper agreements, and then they destroyed product. So now they can't grow nothing this season. They got to double up on the loan next year, and on the third year they seize it for non-payment. They've been doing that since they've been here, burning up the farms, burning up the record halls, trying to conceal the dirt. But you got people in the families that's always been record keepers, so they can go back 200 years in their direct family back to their land. Ain't none of this a secret to us, but because of the conjure war we in, and we don't understand the nature of it, is ignorance. Right? Bobby Hemmett tell us, Bobby Hemmett said, look, out of all of the melanated people of the world, there's something special about the ones from this land. Right? We the ones who are the creative men that love the women so passionately that we generate masculine forms of art.
Explain that. What do you mean? What do you mean?
The masculine forms of art is the martial arts. Okay. And then they get this spiritual energy that's extracted from that. Right? But the men do it in order to have a positive outlet for the rage of the masculine. If you can control the outlet, you can control the self. All that stuff is scripted. All them professional sports is scripted. But you know when it ain't? When you play in Little League. It's not scripted. Because you're trying to learn the game. And what else they teach you in the same age as Little League? Board games. These is giving you the rules to how to play the game called life, which takes you to a plutarchy, right? Which is a total domination of all in existence, right? That's the final conclusion of the game of the gods, right? So they tell you all of these examples to go by, but they don't never tell you what they mean, right? Then they get you caught up in moralism, right? That don't got nothing to do with us.
Mm.
We want to be good because it's the nature of those who come into the physical body. But those who wish to experience pain sometimes go bad because the pain drives them in the wrong direction. That's called taking the left-hand path. But how far are you going to go down the wrong path before you realize this ain't for me? Some people get in too deep.
Right.
Right. So this is the parameters of this conjure war.
Mm-hmm. You know, Rod, you mentioned the sister Erin Lyons earlier, and we was talking about Lemuria. I'm interested in knowing. I've talked extensively with you in the past about Atlantis, but I don't think we've mentioned Lemuria and Mu. I believe that's the same thing. What's your thoughts on Lemuria and its connection to America? We've talked about Atlantis, but I believe Blavatsky said Lemuria was the third root race. Atlantis was the fourth. So Lemuria came before Atlantis. We talk about Atlantis, but people don't talk about Lemuria as much as they give Atlantis love. So what's your thoughts on Lemuria?
Well, they shifting away from Atlantis now and going to Tartaria. Right? Mu is a city. Atlantis is an empire. Mu is one of the first concentric cities that the matriarchs made, right? And when they decided to scale the project up, it evolved into what became Atlantis.
Where was
Atlantis is the city of Mu. It was on the island. The island is sank, right? But when they tell you Atlantis, the capital of Atlantis flew away. It didn't sink. Right? When they telling you it sunk, it went the other direction. When they tell you that the Noah's Ark floated on the water, that's not what the books say. But nobody don't pay it no attention. They just go right over it. They say that Noah's craft was taken up into the sky. Right? And most people is not going to ever see that. But it's not going to make sense unless you realize how can New Jerusalem be coming back if it ain't never been here, right? Which is also a hijacked terminology to mislead us from what they're talking about. When they call Jerusalem the city of peace, we talking about the capital city of Atlantis, which was a jumper. It was called a jumper ship, right? We didn't been through so many. Everything you can think of has been true at some time or another on Earth. You can't think of nothing that never happened. It all happened. And it probably didn't happen exactly like people tell it, but the general outline of the story is still consistent with the historical record of the planet because we went through the cycles and cycles on top of cycles. This is nothing new. Right? So we go through the cycles, and then when the cycle gets so bad, somebody got to clean it up. It had to be cleaned up at the close of every age.
Why did its capital move? Why did it sink?
It just the shifting of the land masses. But Atlantis flew away because of war. The capital of Atlantis flew away because of war. Mu sucked because over time it wasn't functional because it was already at sea level. So when the sea level shifted, it just consumed it. You know it today as Bimini Road is the pathway to where Mu used to be. It's called the Bimini Road. But it had, every time we did this, we had satellite cities. That's why you see pyramids all over the world. But the pyramids started in the Americas. It's a purpose form that we're not going to get into other than what people think. But when they start reactivating, it starts to make sense because it pulls the hologram down. This is what don't nobody want. It's called lifting the veil. From the land, we surrender the birthright.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
If you know who you are and you asserting your birthright on the land that you from, while you living free on the land, they have to honor that. But most of us want to accept the paradigm that was shoved down our throats in 400 years of Westerners educating our children as to what's to be accepted as the truth or not. It's a uniform system. This you can't get that out your head. It's a uniform system. It's written in a uniform format to follow the uniform commercial code of the admiralty jurisdiction of the occupiers that's occupying our land. They didn't steal it. They just convinced you wasn't from it. It's still here, and you still, the sisters have the first right to the birthright of the earth rights. What that means is, by mitochondrial connection, first in time is first in order. This is why they say the last shall be made first and the first shall be made last, because the first was already playing the back position, the last position. Malcolm told you we was the caboose on the train. What is he telling you in tribal talk versus the common language? So now we have to put the caboose as the engine because the engine broke down. Now the caboose is leading the train as the engine, because it was really the engine the whole time. It was just the engine being dragged around by another engine. So if the last becomes first, that means that the so-called white man's world falls down and the black woman world returns. Well, we call it the black woman world because she's first in time, first in line for the inheritance of the earth right. The earth right is the right to restore the balance to Earth's nature, air, land, and water. That's the great law. The earth rights, RITES, is the practice of executing the restoration by restoring the great mother to her position of permanence. This is the only way Earth can be balanced. It's the only way it's ever been balanced under the great matriarchy of the great mother. Every 26,000 years, we have to rewrite the future. And over the course of the 26,000 years, what started out as a golden age will deteriorate because it's following the laws of nature, and that's called entropy. It can't stay a permanent system because nothing in nature is permanent. Everything rise up, fall down, ebb and flow. Right? The blood of the original people is the blood right to redeem. Whether y'all believe me or not, these people know who every one of us is. They've been following us since birth. They followed our parents and our grandparents. And there's certain families that they kept the closest watch on because those were the heirs that had the right to take everything from the enemies that's squatting on the land as a military occupational regime masquerading as our government, right? So when we assert our birthright, it don't matter. I don't care if I don't know none of my ancestors. I know who I am. And I know where I'm from, first in time, first in order, right? I'm the firstborn of the earthborn parthogenic son of the great mother. So whenever it get out of control and can't nobody fix it, mama call her baby boy.
Okay.
So if they don't know what that means, they better go ask their Masonic brothers. Because they going to tell him, if you're telling me if he's saying that what he told you, that would mean Hiram is raised and he's walking. They don't know who Hiram is. The Masons know what I'm talking about, right? Because Hiram Abiff, the master builder, is the one who have to exhume the great mother from the shrine of the Black Madonna. Why do they call it that? Right? He in the tomb, she in the shrine. That's a 2-bar cane in the 4-corner shuffle. That's a 7-sister seal, Pleiadian knot. This is all code that we all used to know. when we have meetings with each other on foreign parts of the land that we ain't from as a visitor. But now it sounds foreign to our people when you're using a foreign language, but you're using our code to talk it. All of the lodges know what's up. I don't care if they don't never show up. They know what the real deal is. They know that they came over here messing with these feather wearing Afro chiefs, and they got their tails handed to them. Right? Tupac talk about it all through his music, but don't nobody know what he's saying in the code talking language, but they know what he's saying in English, in the colloquial language of the hood. But he talking code talk too. Biggie was too. ODB was too. These chiefs. But they can't come up through the traditional leadership roles because the leadership roles been usurped. And anybody that try to rise up in politics or anything of that matter, activism, this murder. And if they figure out that we talking to each other, they gonna try to murder us until one of us claim the birthright before they can murder us. Now they gotta listen to them even if they don't want to. And the process is to look up pretender to the throne. There's a process as a pretender to the throne you have to go through to claim your throne. If you don't know what the process is, and it's above your pay grade.
Right.
Over here, the chiefs have a certain way to raise a chief to prominence. If you don't know what it is, that's above your pay grade. Your spiritual rank ain't high enough to know what's going on. So now you running around using what the paleface told you in the book as your source. And the worst of the misleaders is they look like us. Because the people we fighting the whole time that brought all of this war to our doorstep and swore to never surrender and hold us as our eternal enemy, we didn't swear no ill will to them people. They done that to us. Our big mamas took them in and fed them when they came on them ships. And what they do? They massacred us. And then they told us it was somebody else with a pale face. The original French, Dutch, Portuguese, and Irish that came over here, they wasn't buttermilk complexion. But we don't know that because them the lies they tell in the books when they rewrite history. She have to learn how to read her emotions, and she'll have a literal blueprint to ascension. Most women, the ones that they call toxic, don't learn to read their emotions. They use their emotions to fly off the handle about whatever it is. When your emotions giving you more information, once you learn how to read it, it's a navigation system. Another thing is talk to your uterus. If you're a woman, clasp your hands together over your uterus. Close your eyes, relax, and just say, Big Mama, tell me whatever I need to know. It's Jesus on the main line because Jesus is Isis. The main line is the uterus. It's a portal of life that's only seen in creation. So if it's a portal, it don't matter what your skin complexion is now. Once you got that uterus on Earth, you have power to talk to Prime Source if you tap into that energy, right? Another thing is raise your vibration by not feeding into low vibrational activity. You start to walk in what's called your Earth Angel form. And you can tell the women that do that because they can be old as hell, but they still look like a teenager in the face. She like a gray-haired teenager, right? Because they take care of themselves spiritually. In that spiritual light, it corrects the beauty flaws, right? So you have to also be aware of the fact that when you ground in with the Earth's mitochondrial is talking to the mitochondrial in the woman. It's y'all trading information on birth defects, how to get rid of them, Y'all going over how to manage the Y chromosome. All this is taking place in the mitochondrial communication between Earth and women. The Y chromosome is a mutation. So it has to be regulated by something that's not mutated in order for it to have its optimum performance. And that responsibility goes to the mitochondria while the woman is gestating, and this is why she don't always make every Y active. And sometimes when it would have came in as a boy, she overrode it and said, "Nope, the DNA is faulty. This one's going to have to be a girl to correct the error." This is all done within the woman, in the uterus, between the uterus and the Queen's chamber in the brain, where the pineal glands sit. The understanding of the self, it gives you the highest access to your power. And when you realize that y'all little earths walking around on earth, but y'all also children of the stars, because everything in creation is made up of accumulated stardust. That's how we got here. That's what makes things solid. The accumulated stardust. It forms into our soils and our rocks, and it eventually bursts out as flora and fauna. It's the women who decided how to decorate Earth with the different flora and fauna. Or else we just had one bland, uniform plant for everything that don't work for everything. The diversity came from interacting and communicating with people from other places to put the proper flora and fauna. That's how come the women knew. If you go back and listen to Credo Mutua, he say it was our mothers who went out into the field to really know what they talking about, gonna tell you to eat intuitively.
Right. Then yeah. She said don't
follow her. Yeah. That's one of the questions that you ask somebody that's so simple, but the answer proves their position, and that's being in the position of right, telling the truth, right? Because most people, they take sides with diet the same way they take sides with religion, with politics, because all of these was used as tools to divide us. Even when we start coming out of the slumber, you will see it was the vegan versus the non-vegan. It's the American versus the African American, right? Every time we wake up, they use whatever we waking up in to pit us against each other again, and we fall for it, right? So when I was listening, I heard you answer that question. I started laughing. I said, "This is gonna show it right here. This is gonna show everybody if she the real deal or not." And she aced it.
Indeed. Yeah, shout out to Aaron Hines. Great interview. If you haven't seen it, I advise you to go take a look at it.
Yeah, that was fire.
Yeah.
It was straight fire.
Got to get you on one day with her. That'll be a dope show. You and her together.
Oh yeah. They do something. When they be channeling, it's like I can read the streamer. Like I don't channel like women. I read women that channel, and so I can tell you what she's talking about on current events while she's getting her message. I say, "Oh, she's talking about this." but from like going back after the fact, anybody could do that. I do it live on the spot and no prep.
Dope, man. Hey, bro, so we miss you, my brother. You haven't been, or you took a break from the whole YouTube thing. A very interesting conversation tonight. We often hear you use the term conjure wars, and I know you're gonna go in, but I would like for us to set the context about exactly what a conjure war is. When a person hear conjure war, it may go over their head. They may think, are you specifically talking about like a voodoo magic type of thing, a cult? Is this like an occult war that you're talking about? What exactly you mean by conjure wars, my brother?
Every secret society perform some form of what's known as high magic. Right now, we are breaking out of the conjure of the interim government, right? So it's two conjures three conjures. We breaking three conjures to break the hold of three city states.
Mm-hmm.
The war conjure was the Queen's magician. I think his name was John D.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He gave her a conjure that gave her charge to military of anybody who was using blood rights to create a construct to keep us trapped mentally. Right? So John D. and the Queen in Europe did that conjure. They brought us the Bible. The Bible is a conjure called religion. Religion, if you trace the root to the word, it means to bind down to something. You use amen, which means conceal the God within. Every time you use amen, that's part of that Bible's contract. The only way out is to use the Bible as a contract or read it as a contract, read it as a star map, and read it as a riddle. Because it's going to walk you through how to break the conjure spell that is tied to the 1492 arrival of Columbus. They got cities over here with ancient Bible names. None of that was named, none of that before 1492. Okay. The Al-Maghrib, which is the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, secondary conjure contract under the George Washington Challenge. This is a blood contract to put the ones that came over as Moors with fezzes in a competition of knowledge and erudition with the ones wearing the feathers. The parameters of that conjure was that anybody that's one of the chiefs on the land, the first one to break free from the conjure is the one that's supposed to tell everybody, break free from the conjure, this is what it is. The hard part is our people didn't remember that we was under a conjure war. So when we start reminding them of Big Mama, we all got Big Mama examples that jars our memory. So when I came knocking Big Mama's drum, that's the little drummer boy trying to become the drum major to lead the band, so you can see what everybody is telling you a piece of the puzzle, but they can't see the whole thing because we wasn't supposed to. So the conjure war is all of these sorcerers called priests. They do high magic. Warlocks do high magic, but warlock is not the person. Warlock is a condition that the people are in during the conjure war, where they're not allowed to access their wealth to deplete the natural resources of the land. And if you look, America has not traded its own oil pumped over here in Mexico and Texas and Arizona, etc. They haven't been trading in that oil because it's in a warlock, meaning it's held in abeyance until somebody remember the parameters of the contract. And this is the constitutional contract written in the blood of Crispus Attucks. That's why they got to keep always tell you he the first one to die in the so-called American Revolution, because they went behind our back after the the Loyalists set up the Constitution to keep the British at bay, but the dirty Moors, or the ones who came over here to replace us, they went behind and wrote the blood oath in the contract to keep us bound to their constitutional agreement, because it's written that the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled in vain. So when we talk about a conjure war, it's all of these masters in the secret societies. Now, I got to make them close that stuff. The Haitian Revolutionary Conjure closed. The Broken Mirror Conjure to keep the matriarchs broken up closed. All of these, it's major conjures. Then you got people still right now trying to conjure stuff at the close of an age. And every priest know that when you try to conjure at the close of an age, you reap all of the negative energy from that conjure. This is sorcery at its finest. It's absolute sorcery. It's a conjure. It's voodoo. Well, voodoo is a bad terminology because they told us it was, but voodoo is actually nature science. And that's the only way you're going to see your way out of here. That's why they kept telling us voodoo was evil, to keep us from going back to our ancestral ways.
Mm.
So that's what I talk about. the Conjure War.
What's the difference between voodoo and hoodoo? Because you talk about the
That's denominational.
listen, okay.
It's like being the difference between the Baptist and the Pentecostal, or
Okay.
Sunni and the Shia. It's denominational. Even when you say Santeria, they use different ways to express an organic culture in the enemy face, because he won't stop you from passing these keys down to the next generation. And this is what takes us to Dr. Clark.
Right.
He's a historian. He read history from angle of different writers around the world. And in the course of writing that history, he give us a position or an understanding of what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rod, you said voodoo is nature science. I want to just to ask you about nature and what's going on with nature in this country right now. You know, you really do a good job representing this country in terms of telling us that this is our shit, when a lot of us, you know, look overseas for a homeland. And what do you think about the wildfires, the hurricanes hitting Cali? This country's getting tore the fuck up by nature.
We ain't the only one. We ain't the only ones.
Are we supposed to step in and stop, like do some meditation and try to stop the weather, or are we supposed to let it just continue to do what it do? Like, how does this work in terms of
the weather is driven by the emotions of the matriarchs, and they call it when the elephant's swaying, it causes earthquakes. This is the sway of the matriarch. It's an old earth dance. And they got earthbenders, firebenders, waterbenders, airbenders, ether-benders, just like that movie Avatar.
Yeah.
Right? What we're seeing now is all of this is not natural. A lot of it is to create chaos, to keep us distracted from all of the government. That's the bottom what it is. It's a lot of them where they trying to hold on to their last little sips of power, and they're trying to cause as much confusion on the way out as to who's working for the good and who's working for the bad, or who's working for the right and the wrong. Because when you boil this down, this is a kind of meaning that when you come into the physical realm, everything is how the mind adjusts to that, or how the reality adjusts to the mind. The more minds become aware that the game of the gods is a fifth dimensional galactic chess game, and they use people on the earth to play the game, and then the so-called gods take the form of humans to be blind to what's going on to see if they can figure out the solution to the game. They call it the keys to freedom.
Up in their cribs and shit, because they hitting them in the pockets.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the way the tribes from the West Coast say, motherfucker, if you on our land and we can't have none, y'all can't either. If we can't have peace at home, y'all can't have peace in our house.
Indeed.
Why would we let you come in our house, give us hell?
You live nice.
Peace.
Living nice.
Right? So they gave the appearance of legitimacy using the system of uniforms, labels, and titles. And that's what tricked us into thinking that the police was actually our friend. Them motherfuckers don't give two drops of shit about us. Anything you say to them is the wrong thing to say to them. Right?
Yep.
Because they only looking to find a reason to lock our ass
Lock
up.
you up. Yep.
They're not trying to solve a crime. They're not trying to bring justice to the community.
Wait for you to slip up.
They trying to find more food to feed their prison industrial complex.
That's it.
Now, the more arrests they make, the higher they move up in rank, the more raises they get. You see a parallel here? Right? So once they get to be detectives, now they get to go undercover in the community and start some real shit.
Yeah.
Right? But we see through all that shit now, all of their tactics, we documented that shit and shared it in the public domain. So we know what they're doing now. There ain't no secret no more.
Yeah.
So now all we got to do is look at the tactic, and we can trace it back to the source.
Yeah.
And you got the enemy exposing itself, trying to be an asshole.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yep. There's a question here, but I got one more question before I'm going to do that that question because you brought something to my mind. I know we ain't really talk about space, but I'm going to do something that still affects of all of us dealing with us coming into the sun cycle and solar flares. What type? Could you break down the importance of us being now in the sun cycle and the solar flares and how they affect us?
If you go back to I think it's the 18th dynasty, Tutankhamun, you see Akhenaten
Mm-hmm.
has a picture of the sun over his family, and at the
Mm-hmm.
end of each one of the rays of the sun, there's a hand.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So from the sun, we get information, data, input. The sun don't even have to be real for the purposes that it's being used for.
Mm-hmm.
It's emitting gamma rays, UV
Mm-hmm.
rays, UVBs, all these different spectrums of light is coming from the sun. That's the center of our solar system,
Mm-hmm.
right? As this energy comes to the earth, it gives us information on a DNA level,
Yeah.
right? So the way that I'd like to describe it is information of life comes in from the sun on angles of light.
Mm-hmm.
And these angles of light are angels of light delivering messages to the righteous.
Mm.
I meditate on the water because the water amplifies the message as I become the receiving vessel.
Mm.
I can get a clearer message and it's much more louder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the streamers in the matrix is the same as the rays from the sun.
Mm.
But the same way we get rays from the sun, each star that's perceptual is also sending light rays to the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Those stars manifest in the form of human beings. We call them star seeds,
Mm.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
earthborn children of the sun are the originals, right? And they are the oldest tribes around the world,
Mm.
right? So we communicate with Mother Nature because when we ground to earth, it's the